The music on this chamber music program are overall is consisting of three composers' works. And the first one is the Mendelssohn Piano Trio, number 1 in D minor, Opus 49. The second piece is the Oblivion by Astor Piazzolla, and the Grand Tango by the same composer. And following the intermission will be the Brahms F minor Quintet, Opus 34. One thing I do in all my programs, regardless of if it's a solo concert or chamber music, my norm is I love what I call in my solo concerts the conversations from the piano. And so before each work, regardless of how strange or popular, I talk to the audience before each piece. So at this concert, I would do exactly the same thing. I'm going to talk before each work. And regardless, if everyone knows what that Brahms sounds like, I'm going to share something that you will not know. And that's the exciting part, because that's what makes it all fun and interesting. Now, the members I'm going to be playing with in this program, let's say the first violin is Grace Nakano. She's the Associate Concertmaster of the Tucson Symphony Orchestra violin. And the cellist is Ruthie Wild. I believe she's the principal cellist of the West Valley Symphony Orchestra, and she also she's a performer herself. And the first half of the program is actually, as much as they're calling this the James D'León Quintet concert, it's actually, the only quintet is actually on the second half. And so the first half consists of the Mendelssohn Trio and the Piazzolla Trios. And in the second half, we'll need 2 more instrumentalists, so that would be Laura Casares. She's a player in the Tucson Symphony as well, and Kimberly Sullivan, she's with the Flagstaff Symphony for viola. And chamber music is not a walk in the park. People ask if we have conductors for it. You would think if there's 5 of us, would there be a need for a conductor? And we don't, and that's how it used to be. And so what you will clearly see in the concert will be a series of body movements, breathing, arm movements, lots of looking around, and just trust in the performance. The beauty of the works on this program is that the composers really know how to highlight each person. Okay, so this is not the James D'León Piano Concerto with a few flares. This is not in any way. I don't have cadenzas. I don't have giant solos. It's just, we all have snippets. So it's kind of like if you had this crazy lighting, there'd be a spotlight on each of us at one point in every single work. And clearly, like in the Piazzolla, he loved the cello. So, he loved the strings. So I'm almost in the background on the first Piazzolla work. I'm just kind of accompanying, but you will clearly hear beautiful lines coming from those two. And so almost in a lighting sense, they will each have a spotlight on them. As far as music planning for recitals or chamber music, we have a lot of control. I personally was taught that there should be some theme, and I initially planned it as like, wow, I'd like 2 bookend masterpieces, and then just to cleanse the palette would be the Piazzolla in the middle, because everyone loves, who doesn't love a few tangos in there, right? But then as I was working on the pieces, you start to see a little theme. And what is the theme? In this case was the theme of revision. And then as I delved into that, I realized the revision is actually a kind of a resetting of everything. And in light of the past couple of years with the pandemic that everyone's gone through, we've all had to reset or revise things a certain way. So each of these works have been completely revised. Now, for the most part, the program as a whole is more on the romantic side. Yes, Mendelssohn's, he's a borderline classical romantic guy. And so you'll see hints of classicism in it, and you'll hear you'll hear bits of romanticism. Tangos are purely romantic, and Brahms is the epitome of romanticism at the time. So they're all connected in that way. But to me, I find that, which is a bit more interesting, the revision theme or romantic theme. So I chose revision. The first piece in the program is the Mendelssohn Piano Trio No. 1 in D minor, Opus 49. In the classical world, it's considered a masterpiece. In the classical world, it's considered one of the most popular chamber music works performed for trio. The Mendelssohn Trio is special because there's pieces that all composers create, and this is the one that you would think this was at a peak of when his creation occurred. So it has the kind of the perfect blend of a little piano, little violin, little cello, and they all throw the themes around, and nothing's really forced. Here's your beautiful second theme. Here's this part of the music that we're expanding, and it just makes sense. And now, the first time he wrote this, Schumann said it was great. Schumann was a music critic as well at the time, and when Schumann said it was great, and it was great, but that wasn't enough for him. Mendelssohn actually revised the piano part after Schumann said that to become more difficult. He wanted pianists to have this kind of finger staccato and this little flippy hands, and that's the only way to do it. And that's what makes his work sparkle. As far as the four movements of the Mendelssohn Trio, it couldn't be more ordinary. It's basically just the first movement's allegro, the second slow movement's andante, the third movement is a scherzo, and the fourth movement is allegro in a rondo form. So the first movement clearly has a beautiful opening theme with the cello, and then it balances a second theme, and it just plays with that in this kind of sonata form. And the second movement, naturally, it's slower. Mendelssohn also excelled in his lyrical slow works. At the same time, he's taking kind of influence from Schubert, who lived at the same years as him. And so there's no surprise that Schumann, Schubert, Mendelssohn, they all heard each other's works, and they're naturally influenced by it. The third movement is the fast scherzo, and that's the one you're going to hear the revised version, and that's where the hands are going crazy, and we're all flipping through our little staccato notes, and even the string players as well. They have a certain staccato technique they need to focus on without losing tune. And the last movement couldn't be more like Schubert. So it's exciting. You hear kind of this brimming of Mendelssohn trying to sound like Schubert, but at the same time trying to sound like himself. And then it comes to this fantastic coda close, and I think it's a great opener to the piece. The two Piazzolla works couldn't be more different as far as his style, and they kind of express this whole revision theme. The Oblivion was one of his older style tangos. It was actually written for a tango orchestra, with the accordion and just some strings, dancers right in front of him. He wrote 1,000 tangos, and so this is just one of the ones that kind of made it famous. But the Oblivion was written in 1982. It was actually one of the soundtrack works for an Italian film called the Henry IV, and it's just very popular with the public because it's just so sentimental and so sad, and the title itself is Oblivion. He took it from the Latin word oblivio or oblivium, which means to be forgotten, pretty much. And so then the Grand Tango is a complete revision, a resetting of his life, because when he wrote the Oblivion in Paris, he was studying with Nadia Boulanger, the legendary composer's teacher. She was very pushy on teaching counterpoint and just the depth of music and the creation of it. And so that kind of brushed off on him as far as her influence. So right after that, he created his Nuevo Tango, the new tango. And that tango now, he took his old style of writing tangos, and now he put contrapuntal rhythms in it. He put jazz influence rhythm. So when you hear these two works, when you hear Oblivion, you can almost picture two dancers on the stage. We're not going to have two dancers on the stage, but you can picture it. Yes, with the Grand Tango, you can't necessarily picture two dancers, but you will hear the tango style in there, and that's what's going to be very interesting to put right between those works. Brahms is really interesting to study, because you hear there's a level of perfectionism he was always going for. We read about it. He was always worried that he would be criticized for trying to sound like other composers because he studied them to the T. This Brahms quintet you're going to hear is actually, it started out basically a string quintet. Okay, it had two cellos, no piano, and at some point he just realized he just didn't like it at all. So he didn't revise it. He completely destroyed it, and so that work just doesn't exist. It's destroyed. And so he started over, and then he turned it into a work for two pianos, which fortunately exists. And then eventually it made its way into the piano quintet form, and that's where it turned out to be this masterpiece, where everything just clicked. And that's why you hear in the whole work that there's almost nothing wrong with it. It just made sense. You can just tell he just molded and molded over. People will know when they hear it. But the beauty, the work is so good that no matter when people know the work, it'll just bring them to their feet by the end. So in the four movements of the Brahms, it has the same cookie cutter form. It has the first movement allegro, the second movement slow andante, or this one case adagio non troppo, and the third there's a scherzo, and the last one is somewhat of a rondo, but he changes it. All right, so the first movement is, obviously you're starting out with this kind of somber F minor, but the first movement, I can just call it epic. It just has everything. Like when the first movement ends, you just think, oh, what's next? It's so fulfilling because everything's perfectly crafted with each musician in the group. By the first movement, every member of our group, all five of us, will have some spotlight on us. And then it all just gets mingled together in this beautiful combination. And then the second movement couldn't be more different, and that's the beauty of it. It's the first movement's epic, and the second movement, although it doesn't say it anywhere, I picture it, I hear a Ländler in it, and Ländler is like an Austrian waltz. So you'll hear that in the work, and it's like this slow waltz, and it just sounds like you're in the middle of Austria somewhere, and it ends with this nice sigh, and then between the second and third movement, another breath, and the third movement is back to craziness. It's just it's an exciting scherzo that it's difficult to put together. And we're all just hacking away. There's not one time I haven't played with a group on this piece that they're hacking away so much over there that we have to take a little break between the third and the fourth movement because all the strings, their hairs are falling off. They have to actually pull them because they will get in the way. So you'll see last time I played this with a group, the first violin and the viola both had hair issues on their bow because they're just going ticka 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 the whole time, and they naturally snap, and so they have to kind of pull them off and then continue the concert. And so if we're really doing it right, you'll see the same thing in this concert. I don't know yet. And then the final movement is, yes, it's a rondo that he's following the whole sonata form, but he takes the opening and makes it slow. And that he took from Beethoven. Beethoven liked to take a lot of his string quartets, and what made the really powerful string quartets was always that slow, somber opening before it jumps into a faster thing. And so it kind of holds you on the edge of your seat, like what is coming after that crazy hacking thing. All right, and then he starts off, and then out of nowhere is coming this jolly little theme that just kind of bounces back and forth. He even throws a fugue in there naturally because he studied Beethoven and Bach. But it goes by before you know it. It's not like, oh, here's the fugue part. No, it's like, was that a fugue? Everyone's looking at each other like that. And then it ends in this absolutely spectacular coda. And so overall, I am looking forward to performing this with musicians I've never played with. I love the challenge of it. You know, I think I'm really glad that Henry and the AZ Phil has given me this opportunity to put this program together. And I will be thrilled to see everyone at the end with smiling faces as we perform these works for you happily.